Hello, in this video I want to talk a little bit about the basics of VieSched++ and how is it working and how it is supposed to be used and everything like this. So we are not really creating a schedule this time, but talking more about the general stuff. So let's start. So in VieSched++, first of all, this is the welcome page, and on the welcome page you see here a little tutorial in how it should be used and everything, and I try to cover this in this episode here. So maybe one important point that you can see from this page is that there is a built-in help for VieSched++. So usually by clicking on the what's this button or by simply clicking your F1 key, you will enter this so-called what is this mode. And during the what is this mode, you see that the icon is changing, and if you hover any element in VieSched++, you see again the icon is changing. Now it says, hey, there is some more information for this element, and then you can simply click on it and you will get a little bit more help and more detailed description in what is it going to do, what is the effect if I change this, or yeah, everything about this. So that's pretty useful and good to know. And then let's talk about VieSched++ in general. So here on the left you have some settings that you can use. You can, for example, change the font size if you want, or change the icon size. That's maybe only useful if you run it from a beamer or something during the presentation. Yeah, whatever. And on the right side here, you can enter your name and your email address, and they will then be displayed in the schedules you create. Maybe what's interesting here is that in VieSched++ you will oftentimes see these little disk icons here. And what they do is, if you fill something out and there is a disk icon nearby, and if you click it, then it will be saved. And this means if you restart VieSched++ 1 week later or a day later, then it will automatically fill out this line edit for you. And yeah, so that's very useful so that you don't have to do everything again every time. So yeah, one other thing which might be interesting for you is the whole idea of VieSched++. So the whole software is contains two parts. So there is the graphical user interface, which you are seeing here, and there is the scheduler. And the scheduler is usually started from the console or from a script or something. And the idea was simply that you don't have to install the graphical user interface everywhere. So you can, for example, have the graphical user interface on your laptop and then the whole scheduler on your server, and you don't have to install the graphical user interface on your server this way. So it's sometimes useful, but if you install VieSched++ yourself, and if you are not using one of the installers that we provide on our GitHub page, so if you build it yourself, then maybe you have to tell the software, the graphical user interface, where the scheduler is located, and you can do it from this line edit here. And you can simply insert the path to the scheduler here, and you can click on this small little question mark here to check if it's correct. So here this test connection was successful, and yeah, everything is set up correctly, so you can save it for later. But again, this is only if you build the software yourself and build the scheduler yourself. If you're using the installers provided, then you don't have to do this. Okay, whatever. So here you get a couple more icons, so you can restart your scheduler, for example. So if you finish with one schedule, then you can restart and start from scratch with the next one, and you can open and save existing schedules, but we'll talk about this a little bit later. Here you can run the scheduler and you can quit it. Yeah. So, and the rest of the icons, so this is more like the basics that you have in every software, and the rest of the icons, they are more specific, so they are really for scheduling. And the whole idea is that usually most of the times it's the safest for you and for everything if you go here from left to right. So if you first select the input, then the observing mode, and then all the other settings, so then that's the safest option for it to work. So here on this page, you see you can simply insert the path to all your catalog files. So by default, VieSched++ is using the official VieSched catalogs to be consistent with VieSched. And yeah, so here you can insert the path to the catalog files that should be used. And yeah, then the next page here is the observing mode. So here you can select one of the existing VieSched as one of the existing official VieSched observing modes, like the R1 or R4 setup or the AU setup or yeah, whatever. So this are all the observing modes which are listed in the catalog files. Or you can create your own observing mode. But I will also cover this in a later episode. And even more important, here on the bottom, you can say what is your target signal to noise ratio that you want to achieve for X-band or S-band or wherever you observe. So you can set this up here, and on the right hand side you have a little bit more options which are a little bit advanced, and you don't have to do anything here. So this is more if you're using your own catalog files and creating your own stuff, then maybe this is useful, but it's not usually for a normal schedule you don't have to edit something here or change something here. So most of the time it's really sufficient to simply select your observing mode here, change your target signal to noise ratio, and that's all it. Here you see the general input, like when does the session start and how is the logic behind the scheduling. So should we use subnetting and fill-in modes and all that. And there are several ways to define this all. So you can either import it from the master schedule, and this is what I'm doing in all the other videos, so I won't do it here. And this time we will fill it out by hand. So usually you want to give your experiment some code or a session code. So I will call it TUVeen, for example. So this is my session is now named TUVeen. And please make sure, so if you have your own experiment that you want to really carry out, then only use 6 characters for the session code, because other software packages break if they have more characters in here. So if you type more, then it will get red, so to notify this. But for VieSched++, it's not a problem. You can increase the session code as long as you want, but for other software packages it will be a problem. Here is the description of the session. You can add in a little bit, a short description, and then here is the session start time. So you can either click on the calendar on the right side to select the date, or you can simply select the date here by changing the date or the month, or you can also select it by changing the day of the year. And this is the session start time, so it starts at 5 p.m. now, or 5 a.m. in this case. Yeah, and these times are always UTC times. And here is the duration of the schedule. Yeah, and on the down here you see some general things about the schedule. So for example, usually you want to use fill-in modes during the scan selection, and you oftentimes want subnetting to be allowed. And yeah, so that's, but if you, for example, always if you're only scheduling intensive sessions, then maybe you don't want subnetting, then simply deselect it. And again, here you have this small little save icon. If you save it, then the next time you start VieSched++, it will automatically deselect subnetting for you, so you don't have to do it again. Yeah. Then this is the network where you define your network. So this is on the left side is a list of all available stations in the VieSched catalogs, and they're by default sorted by name, but you can also sort them by their 2-letter code or latitude, longitude, or whatever. And if you want to select a station, you simply have to click on it. So if I want to select some stations, then you will see I've selected them now, and they also appear here on the world map down there, and they are now in this selected list. And if I want to deselect it, I can simply click on it again and deselect the stations. And you can also filter your list of available stations on this side. So for example, if I know I want to use VieSched, then I can simply filter it and select the stations you want to choose. And you can either use the 2-letter code for the filtering, so like here, or you can also type in the name of the station. So begin with the name and then select the station. Yeah. Okay. And yeah, simply select the stations you want and should be fine. Then the same is true for the sources. So again, here on the left side, you see a list of all sources which are available for this as in the VieSched catalogs. And on the right side, you see all sources that you have selected. So the selected sources are the sources which are allowed to be used during your schedule creation. So if you, for example, don't want observations to this source, then simply deselect it and it won't be scheduled. Yeah. And down here you see again a graphically overview about all the distribution of all your sources and how and where are they located and everything. Yeah. Then we come to the parameterization of the session. The parameterization is a little bit special in VieSched++. It's different to other software packages like VieSched and VieSched. So it's maybe a little bit more tricky to understand it from the beginning, but in general it's pretty easy system. And I will also create a new video only dedicated to explaining you how it's going to work. But usually you can either change parameters for one individual station, or you can create groups and change it for a couple of stations at the same time. And you can also save or load these groups to use them later, so next time you create a schedule. And yeah, I forgot, that's also true in the network and in the source list field. You also have the option, if you for example have a network that you schedule all the time, then it's maybe a good idea to simply save it, give it a name, and next time you start your schedule, you can again load the network. For example, I've already pre-saved a couple of networks which I'm using often, for example all the VLBA stations. Then I can simply select the VLBA, click on it and load, and then it will load the VLBA stations for me. Okay. Yeah. So that's also true for the groups. So you can also save and load groups, and it's also true for parameters. So if you create new parameters, then you also have the option to save them and load them later. So for example, I can load the default parameters all the time or whatever. So, and also here you have the option. So if you don't understand something or what is this parameter doing, simply hit the F1 key or click on this button and enter the what's this mode, and you see that every element has a what's this associated, so the icon is changing, and by clicking on it you get more detailed explanation of what's going on here and what's happening if I change this or change this option and how does it affect my schedule and everything. So, and yeah, so these 3 pages are now to simply create your parameterization of the session for the stations, the sources and the baselines. And since this might be a little bit tricky because it's something new in the software, I've also created here a help, and this help is a lot more detailed. So maybe it's best to read it through once. And I also maintain a FAQ list. So if people email me something or have a question, or the students have questions, then I will add them here. And also here you have a very big point at the beginning about this station sourced and baseline based parameterization, which you can read through, and then maybe this answers your questions a little bit. Okay, let's move on. So as I said, we are going from left to right. That's the safest option, but yeah, you can also mix it a little bit, but that's my recommendation. Here we can define the weight factors which should be used, and the weight factors they're really important because they have they directly influence the scan sequence you get and which scans are or which sources are scheduled and so they are really important, and usually that's the first thing you want to change in order to optimize your schedule. And also during the multi-scheduling, if you're not only creating one schedule but many at the same time, then usually you would start by varying the weight factors. But here you can, for example, define how much weight do you want to give the sky coverage, the number of observations, and the duration and everything. And yeah, again, if you find weights which suit you well and you like them and their schedule is good and you're always creating the same schedule, the same network, then maybe it's best to simply save them and then they will be loaded again if you restart your schedule. Here you can define the output, so which file should be created. You can, for example, create a sched file or a VieVS file and the operation nodes. You can also create NGS files, which can then be used in VieVS for simulations, and yeah, a lot of log files and everything. This is the output directory where you want to store the output, so it will create a new folder here, and you can add a timestamp to your folder so that it's sorted by date, and then usually the folder is then called the timestamp plus your experiment session name, but we will see this in a minute. Okay, and down here you can define who is the scheduler, the correlator, the PI, and also add more nodes to your schedule, which will then be written into your operator nodes file and also in your VieVS file. Okay, so here, going further, we get a little bit more advanced features. I don't want to go into too much detail here. They are mainly for astrometry. So you can, for example, add calibrator blocks into your schedule from time to time, and also define a custom scan sequence, which is really handy sometimes. But yeah. Here, this is the multi-scheduling feature. So the whole idea here is that you're not only creating one schedule for your session, but you are creating, let's say, 100 schedules using different parameters, and then use those 100 solutions for simulations to figure out which one is the best one for you. So you're not only creating one schedule, but many more simultaneously. And usually, yeah, and I will definitely cover this in a later episode and talk about it a little bit more, because I think that's very important. And usually you will start by changing the weight factors a little bit. And yeah, and this option also has a multi-core support. So if you run it on a server with many cores, then it's a lot faster. And you can also, if you want, to change the multi-core setup a little bit, but the default value should pretty much always be very good. So that's just if you really want to go into details and optimize it further, then you have the options to do it. Here you can define how your sky coverage should be classified, so how it should be defined, and usually the default values are fine here, but you can change it and mix it up a little bit. And on the right side you see a visual representation of your sky coverage definition, so you can change your functions to be constant, linear, cosine, and all that, but I will not go into too much detail here. You can also read this in the VieSched++ paper in a lot more details, and I will put the link to the paper in the description of this video, of course. Yeah. This page here is again very important, because you can here define some conditions for your schedule, because usually you want to have at least, let's say, 3 scans to each source. So you want to avoid a situation where you create a schedule and you're only observing every source like once or twice. So you often want to observe fewer sources, but these sources more often. So this helps you then by estimating the source coordinates, and there are a lot of reasons for this. And here you can set this up. So for example, that you say, I want to change this or add a condition for, let's say, for all sources, and all sources should be at least scheduled 3 times. Then you can simply add this condition here, and then it will make sure that all sources are at least scheduled 3 times. And it will do this iteratively. So it will first create one schedule using all available sources. So all sources which are available in this list in the catalogs. So it will create a schedule based on based with all these sources, and then it will see how many sources do fulfill this condition. So how many sources are at least observed 3 times, and then it will chunk out sources which do not meet this condition, and they will be chunked out and they will not be used again, and then it's restarting the whole schedule again. So it's restarting, it will create a new schedule, and this time with a few sources, and then at the end it will again check if there is if all of the sources fulfill this condition or not, and then it will maybe create a new iteration and so on until it's satisfied and everything is correct. And here you can define a little bit how this iteration should happen, but yeah, you can again enter the what's this mode and read the descriptions through, but if you're more interested, but yeah, usually it should work like this. Okay, and the rest is not really interesting for scheduling anymore. So that's basically how you create your or set everything up. So the whole idea is to go from left to right here, enter everything, and yeah. And as I said at the beginning, you have now the option. Okay, or let's start differently. So now you can simply create your schedule. You can click on the run button, and then it will ask you to save a XML file. You click yes, and then it will create a new schedule for you, and you can, for example, see that it's now stored in this out directory that I've defined in the output. Then here it's given the name, this is the timestamp, so it's today is 2019 May, and it's the 8th of May, and the time at the moment is 11 o'clock and yeah, 25 minutes 3 seconds, and the session was named Theoween, if you remember, and this is the output that I get. So it's creating a lot of files. So these are the log files. So as I said, the whole process, the scheduling is done iteratively. So it creates the first iteration with all sources, then the next one, and here in this example, after 4 iterations or 5 iterations, it was satisfied. So all the conditions are met, and yeah, so that's here you can simply start your scheduling. But as I said earlier, VieSched++ consists of 2 parts, the graphical user interface and also the scheduler. And in fact, all the graphical user interface does is it creates one XML file. So if I have a look at this XML file, then this is basically a file which lists all parameters that I have set in the graphical user interface. For example, the session start time, the list of participating stations, the catalogs files which should be used, the parameters which should be used, and all of that. So the observing mode here. So, and that's really all the scheduler does. And then the scheduler is that's all the graphical user interface does. And then the graphical user interface is starting the scheduler, and it is passing this XML file as an argument. And you can also do it by hand. So if you don't run or if you don't save the parameter files and create the schedule, you can also only save the parameter files. If you click this, then it will only create the XML file for you. And you can then copy this XML file maybe to your server and somewhere and start your scheduler from there. And you can simply start the scheduler yourself if you browse to the scheduler where it is located. Where is it? In my case, it's here. And now I can see here is the scheduler, the executable, and then I can start the scheduling by hand by simply typing or starting the VieSched++, and then I pass the then I add the path to the XML file that I want to create as an argument, and then it's starting the whole scheduling process. And as you have seen now, it was creating all the input file and it was creating the whole schedule for me. So that's basically how you can run the scheduling in batch mode. So all you need is this XML file that you can create using the graphical user interface, but you can also creating from any other source. So it's really all it is just a text file, and it's a standard format, so it should be very easy in every programming language to create these files and also manipulate them and change them. And so you can select your whole scheduling setup, and to run VieSched++ in kind of a batch mode, you simply go ahead and start the executable together with the path to the XML file you want to schedule. And that's it. And then you get the log file displayed in your console here or in your terminal. Okay, and as I said at the very beginning, is that you can also save and load. So now we have saved the parameter file, and the cool thing is you can also load them again. So if you create a schedule, no matter which schedule you create, you will always get one of these XML files. And you can then go to any of those XML files and open them again. And if you open them, then they will automatically fill out the whole graphical user interface. So every box and every line edited and everything. So they will fill out everything exactly as it was for creating this one schedule. So you can basically load previous schedules and change them again or whatever. Okay, so I guess this was everything. I hope I didn't miss anything, and yeah, thanks for watching, and thank you. Yeah.